bipolar. Okay, I have for the last couple of days been talking about bipolar. It is a mental health condition which is a very sensitive subject, could be a very triggering subject for some people. If things like mental health and mental health conditions trigger you, or you find them very hard to listen to, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about bipolar completely. It is very sensitive. This is a trigger warning type thing. It's a very controversial subject. So yeah, with that being said, I shall get into it. Now, for the last two videos, when I first started this thing, I told you I'd do it in order of like from mild to severe, and then I started talking about it, and then I realised yesterday that I just followed my notes. So, which is fine realistically, but at the same time, it meant that I did it not in order of mild to severe. So yesterday I talked about bipolar type 1 and type 2, and today I'm going to tell you about the most mild form and the most severe form. So it's cyclothymia, which is the mildest form of bipolar and actually isn't classed as bipolar disorder, but almost like a precursor to it, and rapid cycling bipolar, which is like the most severe form. Okay, so cyclothymia, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. I might pronounce it slightly different as we go along. Is the mildest form. It is similar to type 2. This works slightly different to bipolar completely. It will present it will present in adults. It is most common in teenagers and children. It cannot be diagnosed unless it has been present in children, or symptoms have been present in children for at least a year, and symptoms have been present in adults for at least 2 years. Okay. It's very important. It is not it's not extreme as bipolar. It's that simple. People with cyclothymia they class them as ups and downs, whereas bipolar it's manic and depressive, or hypomanic and depressive. But they will say that, you know, they will, when you're reading about the symptoms and things like that, they will class the episodes as like a manic and depressive episodes, despite the fact they're not extreme. They're not that extreme. They are ups and downs. They are very, very mild. They're milder than even the hypomanic episodes. They are not as extreme as type 2. They're just not. Even though they will class the episodes as hypomanic and depressive, they are nowhere near their extremes. Although saying that, the downs are actually classed as a depression, which is fine because depression has so many variations. Depression in itself can be extremely mild even in itself. So it's the ups that they don't really have anything milder than a hypomanic anyway, when it comes to bipolar. But they do, it is a very mild form of it, even milder than type 2, if that makes sense. It's so mild that it's not even classed as bipolar type 2. And at the same time, if it is difficult to see, the one thing about it is it's very difficult to notice the change in mood when you're up and down, and therefore can be left untreated. And in doing so, because of how they work, they're not quite so severe. So when they're left untreated, they can turn into bipolar. So yeah, it's one of those conditions that if left untreated will turn into bipolar. But it's not easy to spot. So it's, you know, because if it's developed into, especially as teenagers, because teenagers will lead a normal life because they will seem moody, and we all know teenagers are fairly moody anyway, but they will appear moodier than a normal teenager. But if you've never been around a bunch of teenagers, you'll never really have anything to compare it to. So if you come from a very small family and you've only ever had one kid, you'll not really have anything to compare that to, rather than someone who comes from a larger family and has had several kids. You know, you'll have a much better way to find whether or not your child is moodier than normal. You know, it's gauging how moody is moody, you know, but they will also appear to be difficult, so you will have a difficult teenager. And again, it's a class of how difficult is difficult, you know, especially when they seem to be fairly normal, you know, and this is why a lot of it isn't diagnosed very easily. But what they do say is that people with cyclothymia will be hyper productive. So they might go sort of, you know, so they'll be like, so they might work really, really hard, you know, in whatever they're doing. You know, so that could be something to look for. It's not the easiest one to spot or get diagnosed in. So yeah, again, left untreated, I suppose it's down to your own intuition as parents, grandparents, guardians, to decide whether or not your teenager, or even as adults, friends, family, people around you, whether or not that person, you know, needs help. It's not an easy one from what I can find, you know. But again, there's been, yeah, but it lacks full on major depression, and it lacks full on mania or even mixed episodes. It just doesn't have the full on effect of bipolar. Even though some will develop it because it will be left untreated. And even those that manage to get it diagnosed can develop bipolar later on in life. So when you're looking for signs and symptoms of this condition, understand that it is very much that of weeks of feeling very low. I mean, well, not very low, but weeks of feeling low, followed by a mild high, which could last a few days. So when we're talking about the lows, we're talking about things like irritability and aggressiveness. I mean, we're talking about things that you'd find in normal depression. So you're talking about the guilt and the hopelessness, the lack of energy and focus, forgetfulness, even things like the insomnia and the hypersomnia. I mean, those that sleep constantly, those that have depression, a lot of them will either be completely insomniacs or those that will sleep, don't want to get up, which is very common in depressives. They just want to sleep constantly. Obviously, changes in appetite. That is very, very something you really need to look out for, is changes in appetite. Pretty much everything I found about bipolars is that if they're in a depressive mood, their change in appetite is something you need to look out for.
Oh, great heavens!
Okay, because it seems to be a sign right across the board that there is something going on, that their mood is becoming lower. They're in a very depressive mood if their appetite is changing. So you're looking at things like fatigue, you're looking at, I mean, in teenagers, a low sexual drive is not an issue. As an adult, if you've got a low sexual drive and you've always been somebody who's never been like that, it's a sign that you're in a low mood. The one thing that is different with cyclothymia to all the other bipolars is this unexplained physical symptoms. I couldn't find what that means. If there is somebody who watches this video who knows what that means, who has this condition or knows somebody with that condition, who wants to explain that, I would be really interested to know about it. So yeah, super interested to know about that, because I'd love to know what to look for if, you know, ever came across it. So yeah, so when they're in that mood, when they are in that depressive state, they're the kind of things you need to look for. And that would also be helpful, especially if you have a teenager, because they're all things that, okay, can be kind of normal, but might not be, okay? Especially with the changes in appetite and physical symptoms. I mean, physical symptoms aren't normal in teenagers. So yeah, but with the hypomanic stages, you're looking again at the high self-esteem and the super fast talking and excessive talking as well. You know, the racing thoughts and the not just racing, but they're muddled and they're disorganised. There is an absolute lack of focus. They are restless and hyperactive. Okay. Difference being here is they have increased anxiety. Absolute increased anxiety. They will go days with either little sleep or no sleep, and they will not feel tired. But that I found is quite normal across the bipolars so far. So that doesn't seem to be a different thing, but it is dangerous. Very dangerous. Difference here is they will become argumentative. In cyclothymia, that is a massive difference. The anxiety and the argumentative behaviour, that is different. In bipolar type 1 and type 2, they are agitated and irritated when they are in that manic episode. Here, they are argumentative, and that is totally different. And they have anxiety, which again, totally different. You know, also, whereas in the depressive state they have a lack of sexual desire, in the hypomanic stage they have a hyper sexual drive, including obviously the impulsive behaviour, which, you know, is nothing new. They do also have mixed episodes. that again is nothing different to other bipolars. They will get mixed episodes. The diagnosis for all of these, they don't know. They just don't know the cause of it or the trigger for it. They just don't. They don't know how to do it. All they know is that it runs in families. That is all they know. And they also know that they cannot have it if they are symptom free for 2 months straight. When it comes to cyclothymia, if you are symptom free for 2 months straight, you do not have the condition. So if you have neither a high or a low for 2 months, complete 2 months, you do not have this condition. Okay? It is that simple. They know that for a fact. Okay? There is a clinical criteria for this one, which we did not have for the other one. So you've got periods of elevated mood and depression, which they've classed 2 years for adults, 1 year for children and teens, occurring at least half of the year. This is a clinical criteria for cyclothymia, right? You have to have periods of stable moods that last for less than 2 months, right? Symptoms socially impact your life. That includes work and school. And they don't quite meet the criteria for bipolar or any other mental disorder. And they do not, and if the symptoms are not caused by substance abuse or any other medical condition, when you see your doctor or whatever, they will do a thorough consultation and you will have a mental health assessment. They will run medical tests on you to rule out all other conditions, including substance abuse. So you'll have actual blood tests and things done as well. They will rule out everything before they make this diagnosis. So they will have to rule everything out before they make this diagnosis. It'll be that simple. Yeah, that, you know, so you will have blood tests and any other test that they decide to do on you to rule out absolutely everything. So you will have a psych eval and you will see a mental health specialist, and yeah, you'll have a thorough consultation to rule out absolutely everything before they make this diagnosis. Okay. You will, if you get a diagnosis of cyclothymia, you will have lifelong treatment. It is not just a quick kind of thing, it is lifelong. You cannot stop your medications for anything or your treatments. You can't. If you get a diagnosis of cyclothymia, it is imperative that you do not ever stop your medications and treatments. Because if you do, for any reason, it puts you at risk for bipolar, complete bipolar. You will end up on, they will put you on lithium. It is that simple. You will go on lithium, Seroquel. Now I can't pronounce this. I might be able to. Benzodiazepine, diazepine, I don't know. So you'll be on a mood stabiliser, you'll go on an anti-seizure, antipsychotic medication, anti-anxiety medication, and you might even go on an antidepressant. Then you will be in psychotherapy talking therapies like CBT, and that will be your life. There's no cure. There isn't. As long as you follow the mental health specialist plan for your life and you take your meds, it is completely controllable. You will lead a pretty normal life. It's actually the one condition of bipolar in which you lead one of the most normal lives, because this one doesn't come with hospitalizations, it doesn't come with any of the excess risks that bipolar comes with, even bipolar type 2 comes with. So as long as you follow everything that your doctors, mental health specialists tell you to do, and you do not stop taking your medication for any reason, you are pretty safe in saying that your life will be pretty normal. So yeah. My feet are cold. Okay. This one, however, rapid cycling bipolar, is the most severe. We go from the nicest one to the worst one. This one is the worst. Ugh, it's horrible outside. It is called rapid cycling bipolar. It is the worst of the worst. If you are diagnosed with this one, your life will never be the same. This is where you are diagnosed with this if you have 4 or more episodes a year. Now remember, bipolar type 1 and type 2, you will generally have 1 to 2 episodes a year, sometimes every few years, okay? With this one, you will have up to 4, a minimum of 4 a year, sometimes more. Okay, that's within 1 year. It will never ever be, you will never go a whole year without episodes. You will always have at least 4 a year. And you could have a mild episode, or it could be a severe episode. It doesn't matter. You will always have at least 4 a year. And it's that simple. What they do say is that there really isn't a set pattern for them. Sometimes you will have a mixed episode, sometimes it will be one episode followed by another episode. Sometimes you'll have a hypomanic episode, sometimes it be a full-on blown episode. It can be as mild or as severe as possible, and it could last. Thing is, it could look random. The weird thing with this is the mood swings look really, really random. So the episodes will circle. So you could have a cycle. They could be every few months where, so you have a cycle every few months. So you have highs, then lows, and then it will stop, and then it will do around again. Or it could be monthly or even weekly. So you'll be like one, then the other, and then the next month, one, then the other, then the next month, one, then the other. It could be set, or even weekly. There's no real, they don't know whether the patterns are permanent, whether they resolve themselves, or there is a possibility that they could be a precursors to full-on psychosis. They just don't know, because that has happened. They have found that it is estimated that between 5 to 10% will be diagnosed with rapid cycling bipolar. They don't know the cause, but have identified common risk factors. That gender, it's women are higher risk of this because of the fluctuations in our hormones because of our menstrual cycle. Okay, it's a fact. Don't have to like it, it is a fact. Because of our menstrual cycle, our hormones are all over the place. We are at higher risk for rapid cycling. Age. Okay, those who develop bipolar, not cyclothymia, but bipolar, as teenagers are at high risk to become rapid cyclists. So if they are actually diagnosed as bipolar type 1 or type 2, as teenagers, they are at higher risk of becoming rapid cyclists. If you are a type 2 bipolar, you are more likely to experience rapid cycling. Now that I found interesting. Also found that those who, the research suggests that those with a low thyroid function are at risk as rapid cyclists. So it's more likely if you are diagnosed with hypothyroidism, you are at higher risk to become rapid cycling. A 2009 study showed that rapid cycling were associated with double the attempted suicide numbers than the non-rapid cyclists, so double. So twice as many people attempted suicide than those who weren't rapid cyclists. That's scary. Alright, and this is where we get to a bit more of what they are. So rapid cyclists are unable to commit to schedules because of their moods. They struggle to maintain jobs. They can't be relied on, either professionally or personally. Okay, and it's that simple. That is pretty much it's just that simple. They just can't be relied on, And everything we know about the rapid cyclists you will find in bipolar type 1. It's that simple. Bipolar type 1 is what rapid cyclists are. They are just the most extreme form of them. When they talk about type 2s, you're talking, that is what they do constantly. It is that simple. People with bipolar type 1 and type 2, that is how they are constantly. The rapid cyclists behave like that. Their mood swings are those symptoms. Constantly those symptoms. It doesn't stop. It's never ending. Their mood swings just don't have a break in them, or rarely have a break in them. They don't get a normal life. So when they're talking about treatments for them, it's difficult. They found that some medications are helpful. They found that antidepressants are ineffective and could actually speed up the time between each cycle. So they can't go on antidepressants. But they did find that a combination of mood stabilisers and antipsychotics can help them. So they will be on lithium. Lithium is essential. It is their first line of treatment. Then they will put them on things like valproate, lamictal and carbamazepine. There are other options for mood stabilizers if they have to, and they might usually do. And then they support the whole thing with therapy. So it's a combination of therapy, mood stabilizers, and antipsychotics, like Seroquel or Cyprexa, according to my research. But any sort of people on here that either know rapid cyclists or are rapid cyclists can add more information to this, feel free, because the more things that we know about these conditions, the better. And the more things we know about people living with these conditions, the better it is for society. So the information I found is really useful, but having people out there that have actually got these conditions piping up and saying, yes, we live with these conditions, this is also what happens, this is what I do, this is how I live, and not being afraid to come forward and say, do you know what, you've missed this piece of information, or I can add this to your information, or you got this bit wrong and actually they help with this too, or is really good as well, because the more we know, the better. So it's always good to have input from people who actually either know people with bipolar, or the other three, bipolar 1, 2, cyclothymia, rapid cyclists. If you've got these conditions and I've missed any information out or gotten anything wrong, feel free. Stick it in the comments. Tell the world that I've gotten something wrong or I've missed something. And don't be afraid to come forward and say, look, well, actually, they do this as well, or actually, we're on this medication instead, or, we live like this because this is how it is, or we go this long between episodes, not this long, or actually, you missed this piece of information, or, it's important to get the full story and to get as much information as possible out there. I'm going to go, and I hope you all have a really good day. Bye.